Let's dive into this newscast with our top focus on France, as 3 people have been killed and 7 wounded in a terror attack in the southern French city of Nice. Among those killed, a woman was beheaded by the attacker. The stabbing incident took place at the Notre Dame Church in Nice. Nice Mayor Christian Estrosi has said that the suspect behind the attack has been arrested. He also added that the victims had been killed in a horrible way. According to the mayor, the attacker shouted Allah-Hu-Akbar multiple times. The attacker, who was earlier detained by the police, is in fact alive and has been taken to a nearby hospital. A terror probe has now been opened into the incident.
Je dois dire que Nice, comme la France et peut-être plus que d'autres lieux de France, aujourd'hui est en train de payer un tribut beaucoup trop lourd en étant une fois de plus victime de l'islamo-fascisme. Il ne fait aucun doute que l'auteur de ces actes, qui n'a cessé de répéter en boucle devant nous Allah-Hu-Akbar alors qu'il était médicalisé sur place, quel était le sens de son geste, sa détermination, et au moment où parmi ces 3 victimes figure sans doute le gardien de l'église, c'est dire tout le sens que tout cela peut prendre et combien l'émotion est encore plus forte chez nous.
President Emmanuel Macron has reached Nice to take stock of the situation there. The assault prompted lawmakers in the parliament as well to hold a minute's silence. Following the minute-long silence in the parliament, France raised the security threat level to its highest.
La réponse du gouvernement sera ferme, implacable et immédiate. J'ai d'ores et déjà décidé de porter le plan Vigipirate au niveau urgence attentat sur l'ensemble du territoire national. Je veux leur dire ici, mesdames et messieurs, que la nation partage leur douleur et leur immense émotion. Cette attaque, aussi lâche que barbare, endeuille le pays tout entier.
Meanwhile, Nice Mayor called for churches around the country to be given added security or to be closed as a precaution. Not just that, 2 more attacks on French people have been reported by the state media. A guard at the Jeddah consulate has been injured in an attack by a Saudi citizen. In another incident, a man tried to stab police officers in French Avignon, but he was shot dead. The new attack brings back memories of the 2016 terrorist attack during the Bastille Day fireworks in Nice, when a man rammed his truck into a crowded promenade, killing 86 people. It was part of a wave of lone wolf attacks which has killed more than 250 people since 2015. This also comes while France is still reeling from the beheading earlier this month of French middle school teacher Samuel Paty by a man of Chechen origin. The attacker had said he wanted to punish Paty for showing pupils cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad in a civics lesson. It was not immediately clear if Thursday's attack was connected to the republication of the Prophet's cartoons. Let's quickly get in a sense of perspective in terms of what's happening in France. For that, I'm joined in by a guest, Mr. Farhad Kavard, who's a retired professor at Paris School for Advanced Studies. Professor, thank you for joining us on our broadcast. Now, the terrorist threat level in France is as high now as it was back in 2015 and 2016. Why does this outbreak of Islamist violence feel somehow more scary than ever?
Sorry, my name is Farhad Kavard, but it doesn't matter. The problem in France is that, you know, the cartoons have been republished by Charlie Hebdo. In 2015, Charlie Hebdo published republished cartoons by which were formerly published by a Danish newspaper, on the Prophet Muhammad, and the 7 journalists of this magazine were killed in January 2015 by 2 terrorists, 2 jihadists, the Kouachi brothers. So this time, Charlie Hebdo chose to republish these cartoons, and of course the results, the effects were predictable because there are, almost everywhere in the world, and particularly in Europe and in France, radicalized people who react to that, and it is a reaction to blasphemy and to these cartoons, and this is very difficult, to prevent.
Right. While we speak, Professor, I must also let our viewers know that there are live visuals coming in from France as President Emmanuel Macron has arrived at the place where the incident took place. He's inspecting this place where the knife attack took place, and security parameters have been set up around the entire church. As you can see, the French president has upped the security ante as well. France, of course, is no longer dealing with jihadist networks. These are attacks which are being carried out by individuals. Professor, if I may bring you in on this, attacks after attacks have been happening in France. The threats are very much in public domain, and yet why has France not been able to crack down and prevent such attacks?
No government in the world can prevent it, because these people had no, any kind of, let's say, terrorist action in their dossier. And so they began mostly through these attacks as a beginners. So that, how would you like to identify them? If someone had already, perpetrated any kind of attack, you could follow them. But it's not the case. Most of these people have no judiciary, precedents concerning radicalization. And that's why you cannot prevent it. In most cases, they take a knife and then go inside somewhere, for instance, inside the church today. The first time, a few weeks ago, close to the building of Charlie Hebdo, and then kill some people, so that it's impossible to prevent that. You cannot put a policeman behind every citizen. So that's almost impossible.
Professor, France is no longer dealing with organized jihadist networks, but isolated individuals who are radicalized. How should France address this matter, especially when it comes to shifting gears in terms of surveillance? Are you saying that there's no way to monitor or improve the surveillance in France?
No, because, these are anonymous people. Most of them have no precedent. None of them, up to now, has been shown to have had any kind of previous action, in terms of jihadism. That's the indignation, towards these cartoons that has made them killers. That's why my guess is that there should be a kind of, moderation in terms of publication of those blasphemies and cartoons, not in order to put an end to the freedom of expression, but to make a balance. The way the other European countries do it. Look at Germany. Look at Great Britain. In these countries too, the freedom for blasphemy is legally accepted. But still, they don't do it so often as in France. My guess is that there should be a kind of, acceptance of the fact that European societies are not anymore homogeneous. They are heterogeneous. There are many people, from other faiths there, and some of them, cannot be controlled because they have nothing, to lose.
Professor, let's also talk about the international reactions and the entire international dimension that's involved. There have been protests in Libya, Bangladesh and the Gaza Strip, along with calls for a boycott of French products and a growing war of words that's already taking place between the French and Turkish president. How do you view the international unease over this entire issue?
the problem is that, when it comes to Turkey, you have a populist leader, Erdogan, who needs some kind of public support because he is in rather bad shape. And so this gives him an opportunity to, to find an enemy. And in other Muslim countries, there is a kind of indignation, a feeling of being humiliated by these cartoons that gives birth to sometimes violent reaction against France. That's what happened, against Denmark a few years ago when the cartoons were first published by a Danish newspaper. Now we have this sort of, repetition of these publications, and many Muslims feel that it is against them, against Islam, and it's not only the expression of the freedom of speech. That's why there is a kind of misunderstanding, between France and the Muslim world at this very moment.
But perhaps that also doesn't justify the kind of violence that's been meted out to those many innocent lives lost. Thank you so much, Professor Kawad, for bringing us those inputs on our broadcast. Meanwhile, the world leaders have condemned the deadly terror attack in Nice. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson expressed his condolences to the families of the victims. He reassured that UK stands with France against terrorism. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has condemned the attack. He has called the act cowardly, expressing solidarity. The European Union chief has said that whole of Europe stands in solidarity with France in the face of barbarism and fanaticism. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has also voiced solidarity with France. The Kremlin, commenting on recent beheading incident in France, said that it was unacceptable to kill people, but also wrong to insult the feelings of religious believers. On the other hand, former Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad has tried to justify the knife attack, saying that Muslims have a right to punish the French. What we are bringing to you right now are the live visuals coming in from Nice as the French president is now moving towards the Notre Dame church where the attack happened. As we informed you earlier, 3 people have been killed and 7 wounded in this terror attack in the southern French city of Nice. Remember, radical elements have been plaguing the city. There was a terror attack back in the year 2016 as well. And in today's attack, among those killed, a woman was beheaded by the attacker. The stabbing incident took place at the Notre Dame church in Nice, which is now being visited by the French president as he's inspecting the situation on ground zero. Nice's mayor Christian Estrosi had earlier said that the suspect behind the attack has been arrested already. He also added that the victims had been killed in a horrific manner. According to the mayor, the attacker shouted Allah-Hu-Akbar multiple times before the attack took place, clearly establishing that this is an act of Islamic terrorism.